All right. So I guess the purpose, the idea behind this video is try to first explore the identity or what it takes to be a professional poker player, and then also being able to assess who you are, where you're at in your situation, and then figuring out who you want to become. Then also looking at what we fail to consider when we aspire, when we have the goal to become a professional poker player. So let's start or dive right in this with just, if I were to ask you, like, what does it take to be a professional poker player? What seems to be the recurring traits or abilities in the people that have been successful?
Sure. So that's, like I said, big question. So poker's got is one of the beautiful things about it is that there are so many different levels where you can compete and be successful. And obviously each person can kind of define success for themselves. In other endeavors, like especially sports, you can only really make a living at the top, a comfortable living at the top. So poker, like if you're a middle stakes player or something like that, so you can do it. So like it kind of allows for a wider range of approaches, I think, or traits. But one of the ones that's probably difficult to run away from is like the idea of like some kind of student mentality, the notion that you're going to always be learning. I think all online games, especially where software is directly applicable to improvement, you see the rate of development in the game at a really high pace. And I'm not saying that you don't see that in professional sports or in other things, but the software is not human. So and the software can beat us. So if you completely ignore that, your competition won't, obviously, and you're going to be massively disadvantaged. So I think a student mentality, all the best players who have been extraordinarily successful monetarily that I know of have studied a lot. Like they push themselves in that regard. So Ape Styles is constantly learning, constantly investing in new tools. Kind of surprises me how fast he goes through these things, because he'll show me one, and then like 2 weeks later he's showing me another one, and 3 weeks later he's showing me another one, and he's like learned how to use them, and he's gotten something out of them. And then the ones that are most valuable to him, he continues to use like on a repeated basis, day in and day out. And Yargo is the same way with respect to the use of tools and software and trying to learn. Lucky Fish is the same way. I'm the same way. And so if you just don't have that, and you don't need to be good with software. Like I'm not good with software, but you have to be willing to learn and kind of like suck it up and go through the pain of, hating whatever clunky program you get. Because oftentimes when we get these things, they're new, especially Ape Styles, myself. When we get them, they're relatively new, or we're trying to find like what the next cutting edge thing that we can grab a hold of is. So by definition, if it's new, it's pretty clunky, like you're in some beta version of it or something like that. So so that's the biggest one, is probably like some kind of student mentality.
Right. And even before you try to describe certain traits or other abilities that are required, you already see that the student mentality is maybe this umbrella that covers any skills or abilities that you're going to try to develop in poker.
Yeah, I mean, it covers an awful lot of it. I mean, like the discipline, discipline would be the next one where you kind of have to make yourself do it. So poker, which, you can, it's not really separable from a student mentality, but you can be the type of person who studies all the time, but if you never play, you're really not gonna make any money. And this, likewise, you can really enjoy learning, but if you don't kind of develop a structure to it, like, on a daily basis, bi-daily basis, whatever, or like at least some kind of real commitment on a weekly basis, where maybe some people prefer to study for like 6 hours in a row. I doubt it, but because that's just a lot. But if maybe some people prefer that. Like there has to be some kind of rigor to it, or some kind of organization to it, I think. And discipline is, like I said, with poker, there's nobody else that's going to make you do it. You're not really, to some degree, you can be in a staked organization like mine, BBZ Poker, and we will kind of make you do it to some degree. But it's still not like a job where, if you don't show up for, your 8-hour shift, you're fired. You do that twice in a row, you're going to lose your job. It's not like school where at the end of 6 months, you just don't get the credits, and you wasted the money that you invested. With poker, like if you don't play, you don't lose any money. And if you don't study, no one's going to make you study. Like your friends probably won't make you study. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
So the personal discipline is, like you can have a flexible life, but you still have to you still have to have the discipline to like kind of get after it, on a consistent basis. And I don't really think I've seen anyone who doesn't have both the ability to like learn and be relatively disciplined, be really successful. I mean, you could get lucky once, but if you want to be successful over like a longer period of time, you're going to probably need both of those things.
Yeah, and so if we take a moment to look at discipline, right? And I feel like most players or most people that want to go into poker, they have this idea of, I'm going to have a flexible schedule. I can play whenever I want. I can study whenever I want. And sounds like by what you're saying and what we've been experiencing is it doesn't necessarily work that way. You need some kind of rigor and structure in your plan and your approach to the game. But so do you think,
No, I was just going to say, I would agree with that. That the nice thing about it is that you have a lot of competition who doesn't want to do it that way, which makes it soft. But to be really successful at, and it depends on how far you want to go. But the more success you want to get, the more you're going to need to indulge both of those two things, like the student mentality and discipline. So yeah, but go ahead. You're still saying something.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because sometimes we talk about motivation, discipline, words like that, and but like you just need to be disciplined. But what does that mean, or how do you embody discipline in your life?
So discipline and motivation are like two different things. And I don't think that there's like that much in common with the two, but I think people tend to think that there's a lot in common with the two. Motivation is when you like want to do stuff. At least to me, it's like, to me, motivation is like when you feel like pumped and you're like, yeah, I'm excited. Like I'm going to go, carpe diem, seize the day. Like I'm going to go get after it. Like I'm feeling good. I'm going to make stuff happen. That's awesome when you feel that way. Like, congratulations. Like, that's great. But nobody's like that all the time. So that's the difference. Discipline is like, okay, discipline is when today sucks. I'm tired. I want to sleep. I had a fight with my spouse or whatever, like my kids, frustrating me, or they got into something they shouldn't be getting into or whatever. But I'm going to do all this other shit that I have to do anyway, even though I really would rather not do it. Almost because I don't have a choice. And like, you do have a choice because you don't actually have to do it, but, and you should want to do it, but it's not the same type of want. It's more like, I want to be disciplined, so I'm going to do these things. More than it is like, I really want to do these things right now. So there's, it's kind of like, what are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing being disciplined, or are you prioritizing how you feel? So yeah, that's kind of how I would think about it.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good, the way you approach it and the direction you're going with this. I feel like it's very helpful in how I wanted to frame this, in terms of, are you defining yourself by your outcomes, or more by the habits or the system that you have in place? Because it sounds like by the way you're saying it is, I choose to be disciplined, or this is who I want to be, so I will do XYZ, instead of being like, I want to do XYZ because I'll get a certain outcome or results out of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, both matter. I mean, like, there has to be, to some degree, like an outcome. I mean, an outcome, especially when you're talking about something that you do professionally. So for a living, if there was no outcome, there would be no money. And if there was no money, then this wouldn't be sustainable. So outcome is important, but it's not really a way to evaluate yourself. Poker is really good at teaching you that. So because you don't have a lot of control over the outcomes in the game a lot of the time. So yeah, I mean, I like, both are important, but I would definitely say that I'm when it comes to myself, I'm just focused on the process and the things that I have to do, and then just trying to do all of those things. And the reward is being a disciplined individual. which is like not very exciting for some people, probably, but you also can't say like, I'm making myself do all these things, which I actually used to do, but I didn't understand that that was a negative thing to do. And then once I figured out that it was a negative thing to do, I stopped doing it. But in a sense, you're making yourself do it, but you want to be disciplined. And that's the reason why you're doing it. Like, you're doing it because you want to be disciplined. You don't want to like live your life like as a slave to something, even if that slave is like, making you more money or whatever. So you're doing everything voluntarily, because you want to be disciplined. So I don't know if I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, but I think it makes sense. Help to understand why saying that you're making yourself do something versus wanting to do something that has to be negative or harmful.
So, I mean, if you like basically should or like have to statements, if you study depression, like should statements or have to statements are very strongly correlated with depression. So if you feel like you're doing things because you have to do them, or you're feeling you're doing things because you should do them, and it's not because you want to do them, and it's not because they bring you like any kind of passion or anything, like there's not an intrinsic like motivation to do those things, you're doing them because you have to. I know I have to go to work today. Like, oh yeah, I should really go to this guy's birthday party, even though I don't like him. Like, if you have all these like shoulds and have tos in your life, there's a really strong correlation with that in depression. And in fact, if you score high enough on that question alone, like for example, if most of your life is dictated by things you should or have to do, you're almost automatically depressed. Like you would have to, like on a depression test, for example, you would have to get perfect scores across I think around like 25 to 30 questions on a scale, with each question being scored on a scale of like 1 to 5 to not be depressed, which is like damn near impossible. So if your life is dictated by like should and have to statements, you're basically depressed, at least to a mild degree, and potentially to like a much stronger degree. And it's also, humans are kind of like chicken and egg, where like everyone thinks, most people think like depression comes first, and then how I talk about myself is a byproduct of depression. But like cognitive behavioral therapy would go into the idea that like if you restructure how you talk to yourself, then you'll fix the depression. Kind of like if you smile because you're happy is the way that you think about it, but if you force yourself to smile, then you'll be happy because your body doesn't really care which order the signals come in. So it's very important to try not to structure your language with like, I'm doing this because I have to do it. You're doing this because you want to do it because you want to be disciplined. That's a much better approach. Like, you want to be someone who's disciplined, who's reliable, who people can count on. And that's who you want to be. So you're going to go do some of these things that like other people wouldn't necessarily want to do. And that's motivational. Like, when you think about it like that, that's uplifting. When you think about it, when you frame it like, I'm doing this thing because I just have to do it, and I can't escape it, that's slavery, and that's depressing, and that's very difficult. It's difficult for that to be sustainable, because you're going to dislike what you're doing, and you're not really seeing like what's in it for you. You're framing it in a way that you are a victim almost.
Yes.
So it's just like, it's not very helpful.
Yeah. As soon as you said this, my mind went to my life is happening to me versus no. How do they phrase it? It's like either I'm a victim of my life, or like life is happening for me, kind of an opportunity or something to strive for, instead of being like this burden that you have to live through, basically being a slave to it.
Sure.
Yeah, like that. Totally. And you said you've used the word "I want to do something." Something that I feel is also recurrent in poker players is they play 200s or 1Ks, NTTs, and then they have to play that $55 tournament, right? Or they should be playing that $55 tournament instead of just being like, I get to play that tournament. That's just another opportunity to win more money, be more profitable. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that there's just there's not enough, which is kind of like the reason why we're doing this. There's not enough like mental discipline or even knowledge. They're just often like young people who, and I'm young too, but I'm still learning, but they're often just young people who are making it up as they go. And oftentimes, like if you're working a lot, like if you're really grinding, like you don't really have the time to try to pull from different resources, like, to try to pull from, cognitive behavioral therapy, or pull from psychology, or pull from business, or pull and try to incorporate the big ideas that are really impactful in those disciplines into your own life. So you end up with like, really fixable, but like horrible habits, like saying like, I'm stuck playing this $55 game because I'm in makeup, or because I'm losing, or because my bankroll got cut in half or whatever. Like, no, I'm screwed. I have to play this stuff or whatever. And yeah, like it's a really, really horrible way of framing your thought processes. But most people just don't have the skill set to do otherwise. So
yeah, so something to keep in mind for everyone, I guess. Avoid shoulds and have tos. Go for I want to, I get to. It helps create another perspective with your life. We've talked shortly about like certain traits or abilities. You've mentioned student mentality, being disciplined. How about we kind of look at yourself, and how, if we take discipline, for example, is that something that was always present in your life, or is that something that you've developed and built over time?
I mean, I think I've had it. I think there's both. I had an inclination towards discipline because when I get engaged with something, I mean, I think lots of people are like this, but when I get engaged with something, like I can kind of put the blinders on and just like focus on that thing. Some people maybe really struggle with that, or they burn out faster. But I can do that. So if I get interested in something, or if I see a problem that's meaningful to me in some way, it doesn't matter what the problem is, then I can kind of go into that. And I had that when I was a kid. So like when I was young, and I would like play games or something, and I figured out how to use the computer. I would look up like all the different ways to like get better at the games that I was playing, to play them at the highest level that I could possibly play them. And then I would play them a lot, and then I would go back and like, it didn't matter if I was playing soccer, I would do the same thing. Like once I had access to the internet, and I can't remember what age I was. I was probably like 12, 13, 14, like that, something like that, when I got a computer. Maybe I was 14, 15, I can't remember, but something around that age. And once I had the ability to like use the computer to figure stuff out, and then go back into like what I was doing before and like try to get better at it, I just used that over and over and over again. It was slow. We had dial-up, but it was, but it was still better. It was still better than a dictionary. So, or like, thesaurus or an encyclopedia or some other like ridiculous means of going through and getting the information. So, yeah. So that was, so I had that kind of like thing. Now, at the same time, you get a better understanding of how necessary that is, or like that's the way that things work. I don't know why I was like that initially. But I just was. And so there's a little bit of luck. And then again, like when you do something and then you reinforce it over and over and over again, you constantly attack problems in the same way all the time. Then then it's like you trained it. So I'm definitely better at it now.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who would define themselves or see themselves as someone who's not disciplined? Like, what would you say to them, or what would be the first thing you'd address or work on with that person?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that's really important is to know that like basically your own ideas are probably terrible. Like to have some humility that your own ideas suck. So if you have the humility that your own ideas suck, I'm going to use someone else's. So I'm going to use Jordan Peterson's idea, because this is not my idea, and I'm not a big Jordan Peterson fan or anything. I don't know him I haven't like studied all of his work or anything, but I've watched a little bit. And he just talks about like making your bed, right? Like just choosing something that's extraordinarily small that seems really trivial, and commit to doing that every single day. So it could be 10 push-ups as soon as you wake up. I would say that like you want to front load whatever the discipline is. So I would recommend like however you try to do this, try to do it towards the beginning of the day as opposed to towards the end of the day. You're not gonna have as much willpower at the end of the day. You're gonna get tired. It's gonna be easy to quit or say no.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so like, to be honest, I would probably just be like, look, start with making your bed. If someone had absolutely nothing, like no discipline, and they were just like, look, I feel like I'm useless. I would be like, start extraordinarily small with something that you can do. Start with something like making the bed. And, you know, as it relates to poker, you know, if I would maybe, you know, try to watch one training video a day. Doesn't have to be from us, it can be from anyone, but like try to watch, you know, or try to watch half of one training video a day.
Right.
Or try, you know, yeah, or try to watch, you know, if you have Peel Solver, try to spend 15 minutes using Peel Solver a day. You know, you don't have to run a sim. You don't have to complete a sim. You don't have to even set the sim up, because some people are slow. Like I can set up sims in, you know, 30 seconds. I don't even think it takes me 30 seconds anymore. I can probably set them up in like 5. But you know, somebody else might it might take them 20 minutes to set up a sim. And so if they're only going to go through 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes they've almost got their sim set up, they're done. They can, you know, they can go on to you know, go have fun or whatever the hell they want to do. And then the next day, like they're going to do 15 minutes, and then like, you know, 5 of that is completing a sim, and then the next 10 are like starting to look at the flop or something. And like in this way, you just start. Like the thing about discipline is more or less is like you just start and then hold yourself accountable. So yeah.
So what's interesting about what you're describing, especially for people that are starting, is it feels like the gap between where they are and where they feel they should be is so huge that, and they feel like they need to get there today. And it sounds like the way you're describing it is you remove the outcome or any results or expectation, and you just focus on the process, the actions or the habits in mind. So just go study for 10, 20, 30 minutes, but don't have an expectation of learning something or trying to figure out absolutely something. Just focus on the process. And for people that start from zero, that's a good way to build and develop the identity of being disciplined, of being a learner, because you have no expectations of results that would just, what's the opposite of reinforce? I guess just negatively reinforce this idea that you're not disciplined because you don't get the results you'd expect.
Right. Sure.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It sounds nicer when you say it. So, but yeah, no, I agree with that.
So start small, make it a priority first thing in the morning. That sounds like two good ways, 2 good tips that can be used there. How about we close this with you know, a topic that I've been kind of thinking about in the past couple of weeks and months, about, like you've talked about how framing things will influence your situation, your well-being, how you perform. And so when you started playing, I'm kind of curious, what was your aspirations or goals as a poker player?
Sure. So I started, you know, and it's not, I don't like say it just, you know, because it sounds motivational or because it sounds good. But I started out with nothing. So, I mean, you know, like I'll try to condense the timeline, but when I started with poker, I was in Canada. I grew up in the United States. I grew up in Arizona, and, you know, through immigration malfunctions on the part of my parents, like lack of documentation, things like that, I left the country where I grew up, came to Canada, where I was born, and lived with someone, like a family friend, who eventually threw my stuff in the snow, kicked me out literally in the middle of winter, and it was probably illegal. I had a friend come pick me up, and I stayed with him. So I was literally living on my friend's couch. I had enough stuff to like fit in his car when he came and got me. I did live with my brother, my younger brother, who I was also responsible for. I had to make sure that he would be okay. And that was like how I got, and then poker was like on TV. Tom Dwan was playing, we were smoking weed, and he was like, you know, basically he's like, I need a reload. Like I need chips. I was like, how much money did he lose? And he lost $100,000 and he was getting another 100K. And I was like, I was broke. So, that's like how I got started with poker. So with that in mind, like the goals were pretty humble. Like I wanted to make $100,000, and that goal wasn't at first like poker related. My jobs prior to poker, I was working at 7-Eleven in a clothing store. 7-Eleven's a convenience store, like a gas station type of place for people that don't know. And the clothing store is just like, you know, just standard clothing store, not a high-end clothing store, just a crummy clothing store. And I was working 85 hours a week. So that's the discipline part. So like I had that part. And then I was doing door-to-door sales because people came in, they just saw me at 7-Eleven all the time. And they were just like, you know, you can make more money with us. And I was like, then I'll come work with you. So I ended up leaving those jobs, becoming a door-to-door salesman. And that's what I was doing. At the time, I was employed when I was kicked out of the apartment I was staying at. So I still had my job, but I just didn't have, I maybe like $1,000 or something. And yeah, so what was the goal? So the goal with the 80 hours a week of working both at the clothing store and 7-Eleven, but also I was working around 70 hours a week when I was a door-to-door salesman. The goal was 100K. And the reason the goal was 100K was because that was going to be enough money to build some flexibility. Because if you have literally like, $1,000 or $800 and that's it, with no family, like there's no, like I said, I called a guy who I worked with. He wasn't a friend I'd grown up with or I knew. I just called the guy that I was clicking with at work. And I was like, me and my brother are literally in the fucking snow. Like, can we stay with you? And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he just came and got me. So thank God he came and got me. He's a good friend of mine to this day. So, yeah, so like the goal of 100,000 was more about, first of all, that was like infinity money to me because I had like $800 or something. And, that's first. And second, it was the idea that would mean that like my rent would be paid. I would have enough money in the bank to like not have to work so hard for a little bit to like breathe and figure some of my stuff out, and then go to school. Actually, like go to school so that I could invest in my so that I could take the money, invest some of the capital in me to go back to school and get educated and get a job. And like I felt like I needed enough money to make that work, and like 100K would have been enough.
Yeah.
And then once I hit 100K, because it didn't take me very long, it took me 12 months. Then the goal was $1 million. And then once I hit $1 million, the goal, like I started to think about so the whole school thing just got shelved because I built so much earnings power. I was making so much money so quickly that like school was just not, the whole point of school was to run away from 85 hours a week at a low paying job so that I could work a higher paying job at 40 hours a week or something like that.
Right.
Mission accomplished with poker. So like I was making more than enough money that I didn't have to do that. So I just stuck with it. And then you hit $1 million. And then I started to reverse engineer what retirement was. So I started studying retirement. I read a lot about retirement, in particular extreme retirement. So like retirement when you're young. And then once I figured out like what that looked like, the number became around 3 million. 3 million would mean maybe like 2.6 million, something like that, 2.7. And the rationale for that is that around $700,000 to buy the house, and then 2 million earning around 5% a year, which is just like market rates of return, approximately speaking. Like I'm not going to haggle about what 5.5 or 6 or 4.5 or whatever, but around 5% market rates of return. So 2 million, 5% return, 100K a year, and then you own the house, which is 600,000 or 700,000, and you're done. In terms of like that's a comfortable lifestyle. So that became the next goal. And then after I hit that goal, then I stopped caring as far as money goes. Like it just does. It's just like it doesn't do anything. So yeah, that's how that was like so that's all very financial, but like that's because when you're like there's an expression, I think it's Galbraith's expression, where he says something like the rich man can learn what he wants. The poor man knows exactly what he wants. And so like when you're broke, you don't have enough and you need more. And I think that's also Galbraith. I think he talks about that. So if you're hungry, no one needs to tell you that you need bread.
Right.
But if you're rich, then you're like trying to, and your life's real good, then you start creating these problems about like what's wrong with you and like how life sucks or whatever. And it's all in your head. But if you are on the street and it's raining outside and you don't have clothes, it's pretty obvious you need shelter, like you need clothes, right? Like
yeah, you don't have nothing, time for those.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's pretty obvious what you need. And so like in the beginning, what I needed was money. And it was very obvious. And I didn't have it. And so the focus was like kind of always on money until I had enough that I would never need more, in my opinion, like for my lifestyle. So for me, I can live very comfortably. I can live very well off of that image of retirement, where it's like 100K of passive income and owning your own house. For me, and my family, even today, that's still enough. So yeah, so that was, and then like the goals became like different. They became more like supporting the people around me. So supporting my family. So, even that's been kind of sorted. So supporting so the people who work with me, my managers, the managers who work with me, who like I'm the guy at the top, so I've made the most money, and then those guys have done well, but they could continue to, they're not finished from their perspective. So continuing to support those guys, supporting the whole, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say, as you reach those monetary goals, you have to not reinvent yourself, but actually expand your identity. Like, well, now it's more than just about being disciplined, making money. Now you're talking about supporting others, probably inspiring others, because like you have this coaching business basically who's helping people realize their own goals and aspirations as well.
Yeah, it just gets bigger. So but it's not the it's just a completely, it's like a completely different set of responsibilities and desires and goals. And until, like, I think it's probably more difficult for like the average person to relate to that part of it.
Yeah. So if we bring it back, I guess, to your first year as a poker player, but it sounds like it was, you make it sound like it was smooth sailing. Did you face any challenges, obstacles in that first year? Like, what was it like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's difficult, like, because I know the end, right? Like I like, I'm where I'm at now. And so I know that how things went in terms of like, they went great, like the end result's been awesome. So it's hard to speak negatively about the experience because it was phenomenal.
Actually, let me rephrase that maybe.
Sure.
Because basically what you've described earlier about financial flexibility, safety, the education part, I'd say most people want some derivative of that when they get into poker. But so did you fail to consider some things when you got into poker, something that could be helpful for people to know before they get into it, instead of just like, seeing that goal or thinking about the financial flexibility, but forgetting about maybe the uncertainty, the fact that the results are not guaranteed, like those kind of things?
I mean, so that's kind of complicated. So did I overlook things when I got into it? I mean, I was naive in terms of how easy it was going to be. But so I underestimated the difficulty, which difficulty is usually the case. Pardon me?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, what difficulty of
the whole thing. I mean, just like the difficulty, just the difficulty of the whole thing, which is, like having the discipline to do it all the time, how bad the swings can be. I underestimated how complex staking was, or like running a business where you invest in professional poker players, which I did like kind of simultaneously the entire time. Overestimated my ability to make money doing things that I didn't know how to do. But that's like kind of when you're young, that's kind of like how you do anything, because you don't know anything. So you kind of start with like, I can do it, it'll be fine. And to be honest, like with, at the end of my journey, like it was fine. It worked out, like it's okay. So that perspective was right, but I didn't know like what I was getting into. So now, to go back to the first part, were there any like real bad obstacles? I mean, not really. I practiced really strong bankroll management, and I moved myself down very aggressively throughout my entire career.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of your goals was to make sure you never go broke, right? That you can stay in the game as long as possible.
Yeah. So the goal was so that was so Zima there, which is, he was partnered with Elio Smockrock Flock. They ran a big staking organization, and he had a thread on 2+2. And he said, like the biggest thing about, and he has like a really, he had a not so good falling from grace in the poker world, but he did say something. He was a competitor of mine, and I read a lot of the stuff that he wrote. And one of the things that he said was, if you're in staking, the most important thing is that you don't go broke. And that's great, but he elaborated on it in a lot of different ways, and with like some colorful language and describing things. And I ruminated on it and just thought about it a lot. And it's very, very, very important that if you're investing in poker players that you don't go broke. And the reason is because like once you run out of the ability to send them money, so in poker, it's like, or in staking, I should say, you're kind of like building this business and you're building like essentially equity. And the equity that you're building is called makeup. So, you know, like some guy wins 10,000 and some guy loses 5,000. The guy that wins 10 sends you 5. You take the 5 that he sends you because he keeps 5, so you get half of it. And you say take the 5 that he sends you and you send that 5 to the guy that lost 5. And this is kind of how staking works. And so now you didn't do technically, like I didn't do anything, but I haven't made any money, but I've accrued $5,000 worth of makeup where before I had 0. So you're constantly accruing this makeup in staking when this happens, with the goal of hopefully at some point like these players return all the makeup because they run well or whatever, and you will forfeit all of that makeup if you go broke, because essentially like the way that staking relationships work is it's like if you can't send me more money, I don't owe you anything and I can just walk. So all of the equity, doesn't matter how much you built, it could be $1 million, it could be $5 million, it could be $500,000, it makes no difference. In just like the social dynamics of staking, if you can't send the person who needs capital to play more funds, he owes you nothing. That is essentially the unspoken rule of staking. And so if you go broke, if you're not even broke, but if you have an illiquidity event, like if you are illiquid and you cannot reload, all of your equity is worth 0. So the gravity of that is quite steep when like that's your, you know, like if 100% of your net worth is either on the felt playing poker or invested in poker players with a staking organization. So I can't really separate the two. Like, you know, did you want to avoid going broke because you were staking people, or did you want to avoid going broke because you wanted to avoid going broke? It means both. I don't like going broke's not great, but certainly staking people raised the stakes for the consequences of going broke much more for me than if I was just some player, you know, playing the game. And so I don't have those stories. Like, you know, lots of people, Brent Kenny's kind of like the famous guy who's got all these stories of like, I went from 0 to like, you know, I had 4 million and then I went to negative 600,000 and I had 2 million and I was like, you know, then I had 500,000 and then I was back up to 8 million. I have none of that. Mine is like this, you know what I mean? Like now it's not like, it's not perfect. Like it goes like this, but it was never allowed to go like this. Like it just, if it did, then BBZ poker wouldn't be BBZ poker. You know, BBC staking wouldn't be BBC staking.
Right.
So.
But it sounds like it's applicable to every poker player as well, because you treat, I guess, your career as a business as well. When, like, think of it on the individual level. You're a player, you have basically when you play tournament, that's your cash flow or expenses, and then you realize your equity. And if you run out of money, you can no longer run your business of playing poker. Yeah,
for sure. But the stakes are much lower, because for sure the stakes are lower. Like if you, I mean, like, you know, you run out of money, like it does suck. I mean, like 0 is 0. I mean, like we all, it's right. So 0 to some extent, 0 is 0. So I guess that like it's, you know, in that, from that respect, like it's the same. But the fall is much further. So, you know, you could fall. It's very difficult. I mean, it's not difficult because other people have figured out how to do it, but it's easy to avoid going from 1 million to 0 in poker if you're just playing poker and you're playing reasonable limits. You could be so if you're responsible, you could responsibly run a staking organization, and you could if you're running a staking organization, you could very easily go from 1 million to 0, and it would be the same 0 that everybody else experiences. You would be at 0. So that would be the difference, is that like if you get to 500K and you have 500K in your poker account or your life roll or whatever, and you're playing responsibly, you're probably not going to lose that 500K if you're responsible. But if you have 500K in like your staking roll net worth and you subsequently lose that, it's gone. I mean, you're just back at 0 again. So so it's like the threat or the anxiety or the stress, or however you want to think about it, of going to 0 doesn't go away with staking until much later. Like you have to make a lot more money.
Feels like I feel like that's a good place to wrap up this conversation. And I guess I'll give some quick takeaways from what we discussed. Maybe you want to add anything at the end, don't hesitate. But sounds like from what we discussed, the two big traits or abilities that you want to cultivate and develop over time when playing poker is your student mentality and the discipline to play, study, all the above. In terms of like, is it something that it's more developed over time versus something that you have an inclination for, something that's innate? What we kind of realize is in whatever case, you can develop the identity of someone who's disciplined or a learner based on the process, the actions, the habits that you decide to take on a daily basis. And what you've said about this was starting small, making it a priority so that you make sure that this thing is done. And over time, as you can say that every day you've watched 30 minutes of a video, you can say you're a student. You can say you're disciplined because you have the record to show it, right? And finally, I guess just in terms of struggle and sacrifices, that's something that I feel people don't consider enough or weigh enough. Like you've mentioned, the discipline, the swings, the complexity of the game, but also overestimating and underestimating certain aspects of the game. And so being mindful of this and not just going into poker thinking I'm going to make $100,000 in the first year like you did, which actually worked, but like maybe that's no longer the case today. So some things to be mindful of.
Yeah. I don't know if I have much to add. I mean, I think that you summed it up pretty well. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome.